Whether you drive a car,
need a car,
or just occasionally bum a ride with friends,
you've come to the right place.
Join Jill and Tom as they break down everything that's going on in the auto world.
New car reviews,
Shopping tips,
driving green,
electric cars,
classic cars,
and plenty of great guests.
This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, this is the Car Stuff Podcast. I am indeed Tom Appel. Thank you for joining us today. When you get a chance, check us out at consumerguide.com. That's consumerguide.com. There's a little dot before the com. I just want to make sure everyone can get there.
Okay.
Check out our 2024 Best Buy picks. Check out my car reviews. Check out the fun stuff I do. You ever heard of the brand Lafayette?
No.
I'm doing a new series of articles when I have time called Forgotten Car Brands.
Okay.
And one of them is Lafayette. Very interesting pre-war brand. It was around for just a little while. Very expensive for a while. Later assumed by Nash. Nash became the premium brand, and Lafayette became their bargain brand, which served them well rolling into the Depression.
Got it.
Stories like that.
Got it. Was it made in Lafayette, Indiana?
No. No, it was named for the Marquis de Lafayette.
Okay.
Who played a critical role in the not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War.
All right, then.
So that's all in the article. It's like history.
Got it.
But it's funny because I wrote it.
Are you funny?
Yeah, that article's actually not that funny.
Okay.
Looking back, I'm not sure it's that funny.
Okay.
That voice is Jill Ciminillo. She is the managing editor of Pickup Truckless SUV Talk, North American Car of the Year juror, and a prolific freelancer. How are you, Jill?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. You were in Indiana.
I was in Indiana.
Did some driving.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I mean, we did not slate to talk about this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I drove the Hyundai Ioniq 5N to Indiana.
Fast.
Fast, but
Limited range. It EPA says 220 miles of range. It's 196 miles to my mom's house. So I was determined to not have to, speaking of Lafayette, to not stop in Lafayette, Indiana to charge. So what I did, and I have to tell you, it really hurt my soul to do this. It hurt my soul. I drove 65 miles an hour all the way down to Indianapolis. Wow, you were determined.
I was very, very determined. And in case you missed it, the speed limit down to Indianapolis is 70 miles an hour. So I drove 5 miles an hour slower than the speed limit.
The thing about that, and I don't know that people, you're pointing at me like you got something to say.
I do, but go ahead.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
Is that speed on the highway matters more in EVs than it does in gasoline-powered vehicles by a lot.
A lot.
And from 60 to 65 slows you down, 65 to 70, and you don't want to do 75.
Nope.
It kills your range.
No, it totally does. And so on the way there, I was very, very diligent. I set my cruise control at 65 miles an hour, did not pass. Occasionally was going 60 miles an hour behind a truck and made it.
I imagine you just swearing the whole way.
I was just like, you know what? I was doing like Zen things.
Like you get pulled over for profanity.
Yeah, I pulled over for going too slow. But no. So I made it, and I had like 45 miles of range left.
Wow.
So
what is that actual trip?
How do you mean, what is the actual trip?
From your house to your mom's house?
196 miles.
Oh, okay, so fully 200.
Yeah. So I managed to do better than EPA estimated. So on the way home, and I started with 100% charge. So let me say that. And then so on the way back to Chicago, also determined not to stop. I started at 65, and then when I passed Lafayette, and I was feeling pretty good. I was like, let's take it up to 66. Let's go up to 67.
And then the car just stopped.
It did stop. So I found that 68 is about the sweet spot where you can not lose range, but you're not going to gain anything either. So you can go about 67, 68 and still make it without depleting. And I should also state this weekend was very temperate. It was like 60, 70
very
degrees.
battery friendly.
I did not have the HVAC on. I had the climate controls off. And, I think I had the heated seat on occasionally, and I was charging my phone, and I was listening to podcasts. But that was like the only accessory type stuff that I was using.
Did you listen to our podcast?
I did not.
It's very good.
I don't like actually listening to my voice. It's funny. You posted a consumer review.
This is from a really weird podcast site. Okay.
I never check it out, but there are reviews of our podcast there.
And somebody said I had a really good radio voice, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank
Didn't
you.
mention my voice.
No, but they said you were old and they like classic
Yeah,
things.
and you were hardworking. It's like, what?
So
What?
thank you. I feel like I have a fan.
Yes,
so
Jill
I
does
appreciate
all
you.
the work to make this podcast work.
I do
all
none of the
it.
work. I show up about a minute before it starts. Let's be clear.
Oh man, but yeah, that was a nice review. I pick through those every now and then to see if I can find something relatively funny, and that was a good one.
It was definitely a good one. So I appreciate you, whoever that was. But yeah, so the Hyundai Ioniq 5N made it to and from without having to stop in the dreaded Lafayette back of the Walmart charging stop.
So, quick note about the Hyundai Ioniq: there are versions of that vehicle that will go 300 miles.
Yes.
This is the high performance version.
Yes.
And one of the things that kills range on EVs more than on any other vehicle, wheel size.
Yep.
And I believe that's shot with 21s.
I think you are correct.
Yeah, big wheels.
Yeah.
So that slows down. That doesn't slow anything down. It hurts your range.
Yes.
That's what I meant to say.
Yes.
All right. Birthday shout outs. Are you ready?
Yep.
Paul Harold is a year earlier. That's Paul Harold of the Sons
okay.
of Speed, our regular fill-in co-host.
Mm-hmm.
And Robert Colangelo hosted the Green Sense Show.
Yes.
So I'm actually on with him sometime next month.
Okay.
We record this week. Do you notice gas prices are really down?
No, I was driving an EV and I have another EV. So no, I did not notice the gas prices are down.
They're way down. My wife pointed that out. They're about $3 right now.
Huh?
So in Chicago and nationally, they're about $3. I know they're a lot higher some places.
Okay.
Just weird, but we've reached peak gas. There's a lot of EVs on the ground now.
Yeah, there are.
All right, I want to tell you a story in a moment, but I just want to point something out. I drove the Defender X last week.
Okay.
That is the Land Rover Defender when it was the 110X, so probably the volume vehicle in that lineup.
Okay.
Just a quick question for you.
So to be clear, this is the 2-row 4-door
Yes.
version.
Yes.
So not the 2-door 90 or the 4-door.
Or the mile-long 130.
Yeah,
that is a
3-row,
weird-ass looking
yeah.
car. It's too long.
One of our friends competed in that in the Rebel and did really well.
Did they?
Yeah.
There's a lot of rear overhang for like a serious off-roader. Anyway, I drove the Defender X Dynamic.
Okay.
Why is the Defender X Dynamic positioned below the Defender X? You would think that the cool thing in a suffix would make it a higher trim level, but this is working the other way.
I long ago ceased to try to explain names of vehicles and how they work because after the G37 with the 3.7 liter engine in the Infiniti lineup went away, nothing made sense to me anymore.
Yeah, well, no BMW nomenclature actually reflects engine size anymore.
No.
But the other thing I was just going to say about that was, what vehicle were you talking? Are you talking Infiniti? What was I going to say about this? I forgot.
The Defender X Dynamic
Yeah,
with the.
yeah.
Sorry, I completely threw you off your game.
I think that was entirely my point.
Just that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just my point.
Okay, it doesn't
nice
make sense.
vehicle, by the way.
Okay.
Also, the screen is kind of small, the touch screen.
Okay.
But it's completely effective.
Okay.
So my only point in mentioning that is simply that I don't think we need monster touch screens all the time. The screen they've got here fits between rails and the dash. That looks very cool. It's a nice interior. Not a lot of wood, right? It's not as upscreen as a Range Rover. It's a Defender. That's their whole new lineup thing. But I liked it.
So tell me this, though. Are there a lot of things that you need to touch on the screen while you're driving, or are there physical buttons?
No, there isn't that much you need to touch.
Because I think the reason you need a bigger screen is you need bigger, I like to call them touch spaces on the screen. Because when you're driving, you're kind of your hand is bobbing and weaving as you're steering. And so then you need the bigger space to be able to touch on the screen.
What I do is actually I put my fingers on the top of the screen.
Yeah.
Once they're stationary while I'm moving, I use my thumb to locate where I need.
And I do the opposite. I'll put my thumb down below and then use my finger. But
Yeah, I may do that too, depending on the size of the screen and where I'm trying to grab it.
But my point is, you shouldn't have to do either of those things.
Yeah. Well,
Bring me physical buttons.
Funny, because I've been driving a Mazda that we can't quite talk about just yet.
Yes.
2 weeks, I think we can talk about it.
Yes.
But that still uses the rotary knob that people hate. Mm-hmm. But man, once you're used to it, it's just right there next to you.
It's so much easier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's counterintuitive sometimes, but I hate to use
because up
it.
is down in the rotary motion,
Yeah,
which is weird.
I hate to use it on Apple CarPlay because then you have to like click through so many things to get to like your furthest icon. But thankfully, Mazda in their newest iterations of the infotainment system, you can make Apple CarPlay touchscreen, but nothing else is. But Apple CarPlay is.
So the deal here, this is the Mazda CX-50 hybrid.
Yep.
So new, the electric thing has stalled a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's that story. Speaking of electric, and I didn't write this in my notes, Ford has halted production of the F-150 Lightning till the end of the year.
Yes.
Probably not a big deal, but they've got 100,000 of them in the pipeline. Not 100,000, I'm saying 100-day supply in the pipeline, and it's just a few too many.
Yep.
So they've got to get rid of about half of those.
Yep.
But they did better this year than they thought they would. In fact, the whole EV year is turning out to be just a little bit better than people thought it would be when they were talking about it way back in January and February.
Cool.
All right, so I got a quick story to tell you.
All right.
I lost my dad 2 weeks ago.
You did.
It was a bummer. The funeral was Saturday. And I was trying to think, I didn't want to talk about it last week, but there's a great story about my dad that I got to share. And it's also like Tom is a lousy kid story. So it's a pretty good story.
Okay.
Hey, Ma. So my dad owned a 1970 Nova.
Okay.
Probably one of the best cars we ever owned. 1970 Nova, 3 options. He bought it in 70. It was a demo, and I don't know how we got a deal, but he paid $2,000 for it. I remember this. Exactly $2,000. I was a young kid. 3 options on the car. 307 V8. Automatic, AM radio.
Okay.
So pretty basic, and that was my dad.
Okay.
That was kind of my dad. He wouldn't pay too much for anything, and he wasn't really into luxuries until much later in life. Like he had not paid more than $10,000 for a car, I think, until his second to last car.
Yeah.
And his last car was a Chrysler 300.
Okay.
But so here's the story. We moved to Palatine in 1973.
Okay.
Very close to the studio from Chicago.
Okay.
So we went from a 3-flat in Rogers Park, very close to Loyola, out here to living near Harper College in Palatine on half an acre. So very big change. But anyway, we drove back and forth a lot. My grandmother still lived in the city. We had a lot of family in the city. My dad's sister was in the city. And then one day, probably a Saturday or Sunday, I think it was a hot day. Mm-hmm. This had to be in 1973, I think. We were driving from Chicago to Palatine in the Nova, in the great Nova. Now, one of the things about this Nova was the color, and I think I wrote down the name of the color. Yes, it was misty turquoise.
Okay. Sounds like a cool color.
Good color.
Okay.
Good General Motors color. We were driving home, and we're going down Milwaukee Avenue through Niles, past a place called Carvel. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
Carvel used to be an ice cream chain in the United States, very sparse in the Midwest, but there was one right there in Niles. We stopped at Carvel to get ice cream for the way home. And my dad was big at ice cream. He was also big on just getting a small cone. Like, kid, grab a small cone, let's move on. But they had this green ice cream pumping out of the flavor of the week or flavor of the month thing that looked really good. It was green, and I assumed it was limeish. It was pistachio. I had never heard the word pistachio. I just knew it was green.
Okay.
So I insisted that I got a
had
large pistachio shake.
Right. Okay.
I insisted. And my dad just acquiesced, I think, because we were running late. Mm-hmm. So I had this thing the size of a large McDonald's cup full of this green ice cream shake thing. It was awful.
Okay.
And I had argued with my dad about it, and it was dreadful. And I couldn't stand it. It was salty and weird, and I didn't have a developed palate. I was 6 or 7, and this green stuff tasted salty. So I couldn't tell my dad I didn't like it at this point. So as we drove home, I was slowly pouring it out the window. I'd look at my dad. When my dad wasn't looking over, I'd move it from my left hand that I drink with to my right hand and just take it outside the window and just drip it out the window. And I was sure I had gotten away with something.
Okay.
Here's the great thing. This pistachio ice cream was about the same color as the car.
Okay.
So, anyway, I get it down to nothing, and then because I'm cool and really I thought this through, I slurp the bottom. Yep, finished that.
Yeah.
We get home, pull into the driveway.
Okay.
My dad walks around the car in front of me first and turns around to see what's holding me up, and then looks down the side of the car. And the entire car is just sort of evenly coated with pistachio shit. And all he ever said about the incident ever was, "Guess you really like that shake."
Oh, gosh.
He didn't even make me wash the car, which would have been apt punishment at least.
Yeah.
So there's the story. The Nova betrayed me. My dad found out, and I wasn't that clever.
No.
That's the story.
We like to think we're clever as
Yeah,
kids, but dads are always better.
Yeah, he didn't punish me or anything. Didn't even talk about it. He was just pissed. He was seriously pissed.
Well, what I want to say is at least you didn't try to clean his car with brand new car with a wire brush.
No, I would no.
Yeah, I did that.
Wow.
Yeah. I was trying to be helpful.
It's a thought that counts.
Yes, it was totally the thought that counts. My dad did not get mad either. So, dads are awesome.
Also, we had that Nova forever. We went to Disneyland. Land?
Okay.
Yeah, Land. Pulling a pop-up trailer with my mom, my dad, my sister, and I, and a pop-up trailer and a dog.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Nova. Good car.
Okay.
Speaking of cars,
Yes.
maybe we can talk about this later. As I go down the list, we were going to talk about the Ram
Yes.
RHO.
Yes.
Which you drove in the rally.
I did.
But you couldn't really discuss.
I could not.
But now you can.
But yes, I can.
So the big thing about the Ram RHO is that it replaces the TRX.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's some argument about that.
Or so it doesn't directly replace it.
I would say it is a TRX replacement, but a lot of, like Tim Esterdahl, my boss, is just like, it is not a TRX replacement. They've reserved that TRX name for the future. And I'm like, dude, if they bring the TRX back, it's going to be like an electric car. Is that really a replacement?
Yeah, it is functionally a replacement because they do the same thing.
Yeah.
They're both going to be very capable off-road.
But I think the RHO is better than the TRX.
And to a point, for people who don't know, we're talking about extreme off-road ready
Sport
full-size
trucks.
pickups.
Yeah, full-size sport truck type things.
Available only with four-wheel drive, available
Yep.
only with a crew cab, and available only with one specific engine. Used to be this monster
Yep.
supercharged 6.2-liter V8.
Yep.
Now it is a far more responsible, far more refined,
Yeah, far more responsive.
far more fuel efficient, 3-liter Hurricane brand V6.
Yeah, it's a high output engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's that new vehicle like?
I loved it. So I really couldn't find anything that I did not like about this truck. And I'm usually pretty good about finding things. But I mean, even the dual wireless charger, which was a part of a $10,000 package that we had on our Rebel truck, and they had them on the...
What was the full list price of the vehicle you were driving?
You know, I never saw a Monroney, but I have to imagine it was probably about $85,000.
Okay.
Because I mean, they didn't do a lot of options. They did add that $10,000 like up-level package, which had the massaging seats and the dual wireless chargers and the 14.5-inch screen. So they added those things, but the truck, as it is about $70,000, and it has all the capability.
That's like $25,000 less than the TRX.
Yeah. It has all the capability you could possibly want with amazing sport tune suspension for like driving in off-road conditions. It has incredible shocks. It has, I mean, all the drive modes. I think it's 9 different drive modes, including like a Baja, mud and sand, rock mode, sport mode, all the things. But I just, it is. So I'm a petite driver. I'm about 5 feet tall, and you know, I didn't drive it off-road a lot during Rebel. I helped get us unstuck a couple times, but other than that, I was mostly the on-tarmac driver. And it is, with the adjustable pedals and the height adjustment of the seat and the fact that you don't have this large hood scoop on the engine, on the hood.
Oh, I guess I didn't notice that. So it's got a more normal looking hood?
It's got a more normal looking hood.
Okay.
Like even the Rebel has a higher hood scoop than the RHO does. I have great visibility out of all of the windows. It is super comfortable. It feels almost nimble driving. Like for a full-size, like 88-inch wide pickup truck, it feels nimble.
It looks a little tidier. I don't know if it's a little smaller just in terms of width or height, but it looks a little more tidier than the TRX. TRX was over the top, though.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you and I just talked about kind of off air, they lowered the price a bunch.
Yeah.
And the pricing here is key to what's going on. The TRX got 10 miles per gallon in the city, 14 on the highway.
Yeah.
The new, the RHO gets 15 in the city, 21 on the highway. So fully 50% better on both sides. Here's the thing about that. They can now charge less for this vehicle because they can sell more of them.
Yep.
The old car, they just needed to clean up on every single one of them because they didn't want to sell a lot of them because it was going to ding their fuel economy numbers.
Yeah.
But here, 1521 is about what a big pickup gets.
Yeah.
That's pretty reasonable. So they can sell a lot of these now and not worry about it. So they're more accessible to people. I think this is going to be the more successful vehicle.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's far more capable and far more drivable than the TRX ever was. And it still has a lot of the TRX-like functions, like it has launch control. So it's still there were some RAM specs that I was looking at that the TRX has, and I know you were looking at Motor Trend specs, but the RAM specs, it says the TRX, the 2024 TRX was 0 to 60 in like 4.6 seconds, 4.5 seconds, and then the RHO was like 4.6 seconds. So per RAM specs, it was only 0.1 second slower in the 0 to 60 than the TRX.
Yeah, I'm looking at vastly different numbers. I saw numbers of 3.7 for the TRX and about 5 for the Hurricane. So the TRX is faster, but 5 seconds to 60 in a full-size pickup is
really
still
good.
Incredible.
It's really good.
It's really fast, and what really matters if you're going to use this off-road is available torque down low, and you're saying that's good.
Yeah. No, it is. I can't, like, the word I kept using to describe was smooth. And I wrote a full review for this.
In any application, I haven't driven the RHO. In any application, that new Hurricane engine is slick.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I wrote a full review for this on thedrive.com. And my opening paragraph, they had us do jumps. And they had us do 3 in a row. And the first jump, I can't remember now because it's been like a couple of weeks, but it's like they wanted us to go 35 miles per hour, then 55 miles an hour, and then 45 miles per hour, or something like that. And so it was like slow, fast, slow. And for the last jump, I didn't quite slow down enough, and I flew. And I was just like, uh-oh. Like, I'm going to break the truck. And we, like, landed really hard. I know I bottomed out. And the guy they had an instructor in the seat with you, the right seat. And I looked at him, I'm like, stunned and I'm apologetic. He's like, smiling really big. And he's like, isn't that amazing? And I'm like, it is. And he's like, you just saw the limits of that truck. That is so cool. And I was just like, yep, it is.
And when we talk about skid plates, that's why vehicles have them.
Yep.
Because there are things on the soft underbelly of a truck you don't want to meet the ground.
That is correct. But I just like, and it was funny because I got off of that off-road course because we were in Hollyoaks, Michigan, and we drove off-road in a little course there. And so I got off that course. I immediately text messaged my Rebel partner, and I was like, we could have pushed the truck a lot harder than we did.
All right. And now you said you wrote an article for The Drive about this, so
Yes.
we can link to that.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right, coming up, John Vincent, senior automotive correspondent for U.S. News and World Report, is going to talk to us about leasing.
Yes.
All right, stick around.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, we're back. This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast. I'm Tom. She's Jill. In a moment, we're going to talk a little bit of leasing, but people should follow me on Twitter.
Should they?
Yeah, I found some good cars over the weekend.
Okay.
Not a lot, but mostly for the car spotter stuff.
Okay.
There's great stuff around Chicago that I don't think people realize is that cool. Also, I mentioned that Saturday was my dad's funeral.
Yes.
And afterwards, no one wanted to do anything.
Right.
Everyone wanted to be alone. So I got in the car. I had 2 cars. I needed to put mileage on one. Mm-hmm. So I drove into Chicago in one of the test cars, put a lot of mileage on it, and I got bagels.
Okay. Where did you get bagels from?
New York Bagel and Bialy on Tui. That's actually Niles.
Okay.
Just outside of Chicago. You've seen it. But my story is that I followed a Ford Galaxy part of the way. The great thing about an old car like that, especially an old car that's probably in reasonably good condition, but probably tuned more for summer, is that it's running rich. And if you're my age, you appreciate the smell of an old carbureted car running rich. And if you're behind it, you just know it. And the crazy part about it is imagining being in traffic in 1971 and every single car smells like...
And they probably didn't have a recirc button on your HVAC.
No, like how are we not all dead?
Well, yeah, fair point. Yeah.
It's funny now because if you run into just one car like that, you can pick it out.
Yeah.
You know what that's like? That's like if you're in traffic and stop and go traffic and you know someone's smoking a cigar someplace.
Or marijuana. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I now smell marijuana while people are driving.
Yeah, that's not good.
Not good.
You know, yeah, they should be doing the edibles and no one can tell.
That is also true.
All right, you and I have talked about this for like the entire length of time we've been running the Car Stuff Podcast, and we have never talked about leasing.
Yes, but we've always wanted to talk about leasing.
We have, and on the radio, on the hotline,
On the hotline,
It's
yes.
John Vincent. He is the, I just forgot John's title. He is Senior Automotive Correspondent for U.S. News and World Report. John, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm forgetting everything
We're
today,
having
sir.
a Monday.
That's okay.
You may be better than us. But tell us a little bit about what you do at U.S. News.
Well, I do a lot of things at U.S. News. I talk about how to buy cars. I talk about cars themselves. I talk about trends. I talk about EVs. I talk about everything.
Well, good. And that's why you're here. We appreciate your expertise. One of the interesting things that we've run into over the years running the podcast is we've had a couple people who wanted to come on and talk leasing, but one of them was like vehemently anti-leasing. And it was totally not the angle I wanted to take because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong right now, John, but leasing is just one tool you can use to acquire a vehicle, right? It's not necessarily or shouldn't be scary. It isn't dangerous and it isn't a scam. Am I correct?
Exactly. And for the right car, it's the right tool to use. Before the pandemic, about 1 in 3 cars leaving dealership lots was leased. That number dropped off a little bit during the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's starting to come back. But it's a huge part of the market.
Now, the people who were leasing, as I understand it, were generally probably people with a little bit more financial savvy and probably wealthier people. Does that sound correct?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I mean, leasing used to be for businesses and people who bought luxury cars and wanted to turn them every once in a while. But now leasing's kind of for everybody. And hard to believe, Honda is the biggest company out there with leasing.
Funny thing about that, in doing some research on leasing, people seem to be disappointed that Honda no longer puts together a $200 lease on the Accord. And I guess that was a thing that you could do for years and years and years, is that there was a factory lease on the Accord that was ridiculously affordable. But is that still the case? Are there manufacturers of cars, especially cars with really good resale values, that still put together these factory leases?
The factory leases, $200 used to be the magic number. Now it's kind of $300 because interest rates are up, cars are more expensive. It's really hard to hit that $200 number. Some manufacturers do it every once in a while. Hyundai, especially on some of their smallest SUVs, they hit that number every once in a while. But it's not as common as it used to be.
So tell us, why should somebody buy and why should somebody lease?
So with leasing, you can get more car than your budget would allow you to buy. Because you're only paying for the depreciation that's expected to occur during the term of the lease, plus interest and fees, typically a lease payment is lower than a purchase payment on the same vehicle.
And the expected down payment, right, the cash up front is reduced as well?
There's typically cash due up front, not always. There are zero-down leases. Volkswagen does a lot of those. But you can generally expect to pay between, say, $2,000 and $6,000 up front.
And then lease terms are typically 2 or 3 years, is that correct? And why is that correct?
So, yes, you generally have 2 and 3 year leases, with 3 years being the most common. And the reason is car makers want to have their dealers get those cars back in 3 years.
Oh.
Because those gently used 3-year-old used cars are fantastic CPO cars for them to mark up and sell.
And that's a growing segment. For people who know, CPO's certified pre-owned.
Yeah.
Really interesting buying segment that's between new and used. And they're cars that have been approved by the manufacturer.
Yep.
You can usually get factory financing on them.
Yeah.
And they're usually in great shape. That's kind of the promise.
Yeah.
Yep, and the pipeline for that inventory is lease
Leases.
return vehicles.
Interesting, yeah. Which is part of the reason, too, that used car prices went up so much after the pandemic is people weren't buying or leasing cars, so there was nothing in the pipeline.
Exactly. And rental car agencies were keeping their cars a whole lot longer, so the rental cars weren't coming back into the CPO pipelines either.
Yeah, and I mean, typically whenever anybody asks me about leasing versus buying, I'm like, I tend to be a Dave Ramsey fan where I'm like,
I wrote his name down. He's in my notes.
buy cat, pay cash, buy what you can afford, that kind of thing. But, I had a friend who every 3 years, like he would buy his cars and every 3 years he would like trade it in and buy a new car. And he was constantly underwater. Like he bought a Toyota Camry and owed like $40,000 on it. I'm like, dude, you are the perfect case to lease. Like, do not buy another car because you are just losing money here.
Yep, and there are actually a lot of people underwater right now because of inflated car prices during the pandemic.
Right.
the cars aren't worth as much now as they would have expected to be, so they owe a whole lot more on them than they're worth.
So talk a little bit about the downside of leasing, and I want to get to the reason why people might want to lease electric cars in a moment. But obviously leasing gets you the lower payment. We talked about that, and then you get to switch cars more often, which is fun. You're always in a relatively new car. What's the downside of leasing?
So there are a couple. One, you're always going to have a payment.
Yeah.
With a car loan, you pay the car off, your car payment stops. With a lease, every time you turn over to that lease, you get a new payment. So you always have a car payment. The other thing is, you pay, say, $6,000 down or $5,000 down on your lease. You drive off the lot and you wreck that car, your $5,000 is gone.
Oh.
You have no equity in that car. You have to go out and get another leased car and hope your gap insurance covers the value of the lease back to the leasing company.
I had not thought about that. So that's usually called your capital cost reduction or whatever, but that's the upfront money on a lease. You have that's not equity. Oh, you can just lose that.
That is not equity.
Oh, man. I have never considered that.
Yeah, and
that's why you want to have the lowest lease payment up front as possible.
Okay, good to know.
So I want to tangent for a moment because you just mentioned something that I don't think we've ever talked about, and that's gap insurance. So can you just say what that is, and can you have it on leased cars as well as new cars?
Yes. Gap insurance, basically, if you can't make up the gap between the value of the car and the amount of money that you owe, and on a lease you do owe money because it's a contract, gap insurance steps in and pays back the leasing company or the lender for that gap. It doesn't protect you as much as it protects the lender or the leasing company, but it does protect you. Here's the thing about gap insurance. Dealers want to sell you gap insurance. Don't buy gap insurance at a dealer. Buy gap insurance from your insurance company.
Okay.
Because you'll get a generally much, much better price.
And can you do that after you buy the car then? Like you bought the car and then you go to your insurance person and buy gap insurance?
When you do buy, because most leasing companies require that you have gap insurance. Okay.
Gap insurance was relatively new to me because we've done it on our last two cars. And totally paid off because my husband totaled our car before we were done paying it off the last time. So totally paid off.
So John, you said that many lease companies require gap insurance. So that's another cost of leasing.
Yes, it is.
Okay, interesting.
Leases can come with a lot of fees, and a lot of them are very confusing. So if you have an unscrupulous dealership, it's really hard to get through the noise to find out what you really should be paying because there will be so many, fees and charges and add-ons like gap insurance or gap coverage. So you have to be really careful. Plus, leasing comes with its own language that most car buyers don't understand.
Yes.
So that's another way that dealers can confuse you.
I was going through those terms today. Yeah.
Yeah, you really need to do your homework up front.
Real quick, talking about leasing terms, you were talking about fees that show up when you purchase the vehicle or take acquisition of the vehicle. And one of them is an acquisition fee, which is in addition to a cap reduction fee. What is an acquisition fee? Is that just money to the dealer?
That's just money to the dealer.
Okay.
Can you negotiate that?
You can negotiate that.
Okay.
Actually, that's a point I wanted to make. Thank you, Jill, is that everything in a lease, just like everything on a purchase, is negotiable, correct?
Most things in a lease, just like most things in a purchase, are negotiable. The big things that are negotiable are the capitalized cost, which is the price of the car, and something called the money factor, which is the interest rate in leasing. And you really need to understand what the money factor is when you lease, because otherwise you don't know how much interest you're paying.
John, who is it that leases the car to people these days? I know most manufacturers, through their captive lenders, do some leasing, but there are external lenders too, right? You don't have to lease through a manufacturer if you can get a good deal someplace else?
Correct. You can go through a leasing company and lease the car.
Okay. And then now this is the confusing part, and this is why leasing is so important in 2024 rolling into 2025. Electric vehicles. Very few electric vehicles are actually built here and have the battery chemistry sufficiently domestically sourced to qualify for the federal tax credit of a significant $7,500. However, there's the workaround, right, John, of of leasing these vehicles, which is considered a business deal or a commercial application. So people can, like, buy a Subaru Solterra, which does not qualify for the federal tax credit, but if you lease it, you can get the $7,500. But how does that work? It seems very confusing because the lessor then has to agree to give you that money.
So it is extremely confusing. Very few people in our industry even realize, all the nuts and bolts of this. So because the car is being sold to the leasing company and you don't actually own it, it is considered to be a business vehicle of the leasing company. Business vehicles are exempt from a lot of the rules around the federal EV tax credit. So the lending company gets the credit.
Right.
Now, they can choose to pass that on to you or not. What usually happens is they pass it on to you in the way of lower monthly payments.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very confusing thing. And I guess it's hard to trace that you got that value. Yeah.
Exactly. It's impossible to trace unless they tell you that they're doing it.
Wow, that's crazy.
So you need to ask about it is the end of that story. And know that this is something that you are, you have the potential to get by leasing an electric vehicle.
Now, I believe some companies, Hyundai, I believe, and Kia, I believe, are working with you on some of these vehicles that don't qualify. Because like the Ioniq.
Right, because most of their vehicles, they don't qualify because they're built overseas or they don't meet the battery sourcing requirements quite yet.
So if you were to lease a vehicle through them, and if it's easier, right? If the company itself, if you go through their captive lender, they're probably more willing to work with you and probably more transparent about the process.
Exactly. I'm not a huge fan of leasing except for the right person. But EVs are someplace where I would think about leasing.
Okay.
Because a lease locks in your end-of-term value. A purchase does not.
Okay.
So you lease a car today, it's going to have a residual value of, say, 70% of its value. If you purchase a car today and battery chemistry gets a whole lot better or some new technology comes out in the next few years, your purchased car could be worth, a half or a third.
Mm.
So by leasing, you lock in that end-of-lease value.
Yeah, that's something to consider.
Well, and that makes a lot of good sense because I feel like electric vehicle technology is kind of at that pace where things are changing so rapidly. I mean, it's just like 3 years from now. I mean, look at the Nissan Leaf. That wasn't that long ago, that the Nissan Leaf was new on the scene. And you look at something like a Sierra EV or a Honda Prologue or something like that, and it is eons better with tons more range, than the original Leaf, which had like maybe 100 miles of range. And now you're looking at 300, 400 miles of range. So that wasn't something I would have thought of, but that's totally brilliant.
Well, look at the Tesla Model 3, where the price of that car has dropped precipitously since it's been introduced. Right in lockstep with that, the used car values are dropping like a stone. Mm. But if you had leased that car, your lease would have been locked in on the residual value when you signed it a few years ago. Mm. So you don't have to worry about that decrease in value.
John, we're almost out of time here, but real quick, you were talking about the residual value. What is the value that you can, as a consumer, purchase the vehicle for after the lease? Is it the residual value, or is there some other different calculation?
It's generally the residual value, but it is spelled out in the terms of the lease. So when you sign the lease, you know how much that car would cost you at the end of the lease.
Excellent. John, we've run out of time. You guys wrote an article called How Does Leasing a Car Work? We will link to that. What else should we know about what you guys are doing over at U.S. News?
Well, we're getting towards our award season. In a couple of weeks, we'll be naming our best vehicle brands, our best SUV brands, our best CPO program, and our best luxury car brand. Those awards will be coming out at the Los Angeles Auto Show.
Oh, well, hopefully we can talk to you at some point about those.
Absolutely. Love to.
All right, John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
That was John Vincent with U.S. News. We're going to take a break, and when we come back...
Quiz time.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, we're back. This is the Car Stuff Podcast. I'm Tom. She's Jill. We just learned a little bit about leasing.
Yes.
I should be more familiar. I've never leased. My buddy Dave fearlessly leased when he was very young. An Acura Integra RS. When the first generation Integras were so good. They were so much fun. And he just had to have one, and he leased one. And that worked out really well, actually, because also the resale on those was predicted to be bulletproof, and it was. So
Right.
the lease is actually surprisingly affordable.
Right.
But enough about me and my friends. You do social media
It's
stuff?
my turn. Yes, I do. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads, all the things. X, Twitter, I guess, X Twitter. I'm still having problems with that. But yes, I do all the things at Jill Ciminillo, and I use the hashtag car du jour.
Steve and Johnny want me off of X.
Yeah.
And they want me on Threads instead. And the problem with that is to get onto Threads, I need to be on
Instagram. Yep.
Yeah, and I haven't done that.
So I have to say, Instagram is probably one of my favorite media because it's happy. Like there's just cool pictures and there's things you want to learn about. And I don't find a lot of the nasty, I don't get a lot of the nasty comments. I don't see a lot of the nasty grams that you get on some of the other social media. So but then again, I just like looking at cute puppies and kittens and things like that. So
See, I don't post or comment on YouTube, but I find YouTube very rewarding. For music, for old TV stuff, for movies. There's a huge community of people who know about this stuff and put up clips, and it's amazing. Also, I keep watching clips from Inglourious Bastards. I don't know why. Quentin Tarantino, awesome.
was Brad Pitt in that?
Yes.
Okay,
He was
I think I know
Aldo
movie
the
you're-
Apache.
Okay, I'm like, I think I know the movie you're talking about.
If you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in the last 6 minutes, you should watch it again. It is so entertaining.
Okay. Well,
Totally over the top, revisionist history. It's on some level it's profoundly stupid, but it doesn't matter. It's a great movie.
I don't think I've seen it all the way through, so I will maybe
Yeah,
try to
and
make
Christoph
it a point.
Waltz is like the greatest living actor. He's so good.
Well,
all right.
You know what's also entertaining?
What's that?
My TikTok. I have to say, I know you don't like TikTok.
No,
but
no. I was moving along on my checklist,
I know, but
and
I
you just yanked me back.
I did. I yanked you back
yeah.
because I wanted to say that I posted on TikTok over the weekend. I crawled into the gear tunnel for the Rivian R1T.
I thought you were going to say a bar.
No. I crawled into the gear tunnel for the R1T and showed that there's a release mechanism, like an emergency release mechanism in the gear tunnel. That video almost it's like 890,000 views right now.
People should know what that is, but in pickup trucks, there's kind of a dead space.
Yeah, between the cabin and the truck bed.
Yeah, and part of that is below the seat. So the way that works is you can give up that space. Rivian has actually created a passage. I don't know how much space that is.
It's a lot. I fit in it.
It's like a good trunk.
It's a lot.
Would you say it's 12, 14 cubic feet?
Yeah, probably.
It's useful space that they found.
It's long, usable space. Like
Yeah.
think skis, golf clubs, fishing poles, that kind of stuff would
And
fit in there.
there are aftermarket outfitters that will put things there.
Yep.
Like I've seen a camp kitchen.
Yes, come out of it.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Rivian's pretty cool.
But yeah, so I have a video on my TikTok about that. I just wanted to point that out. I'm pretty proud of the video.
All right.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Apparently, I'm giving people panic attacks.
Because you think you're going to get stuck in there?
And it's very claustrophobic. It's very tight.
Yeah, I would never do that. I couldn't do it anyway. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like I can't drive a Miata. Same thing.
Really?
It's not fun.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's
I'm
funny
sorry.
if you're watching me get into a Miata. That's funny.
Okay.
I remember trying to get into the Pontiac Solstice.
Oh.
Which was a hoot to drive.
Yeah.
It was kind of a crappy car.
Yeah.
Like it was built really poorly.
Yeah.
But it did handle well.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
All right.
I will put you back on your rails.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
if I can find them.
Okay.
I'm pretty shook up now.
We could go back to TikTok if you like.
No.
Okay.
No, it's quiz time. Okay. This is quiz number 245, maybe. This is episode 245. Any feng shui to 245?
I don't think so.
All right. Consider how we might celebrate 250. That feels like a thing.
Okay. 5 more episodes. Got it.
Yeah. All right. Today's quiz is home built or imported.
Okay.
Going to give you a car. You just have to tell me it's built in the U.S. or not.
Oh, that's not going to be easy
Probably not.
because the whole Made in America index is very mind-boggling.
It gets confusing.
It does.
Now, this first one you might know because we had someone from this brand on the show talking about this.
Okay.
Bright Drop. They've renamed their trucks the Zevo 400 and Zevo 600, the EV delivery vans.
I think I wasn't here for this episode.
Well, are the Bright Drop trucks built in the U.S. or someplace else?
Or Canada?
Or Canfield, Michigan?
I think I'm going to say Canada.
Yeah.
I think you gave that away.
I did, yeah. I'm really off my game today. They are built in the old Cami assembly plant, which General Motors built, is that the late 80s, early 90s, with Suzuki.
Okay.
So they used to build things there like the Suzuki Sidekick, if you remember that. Very, very popular small SUV, like a shrunken Jeep Wrangler. Okay. All right, you're on the board by accident.
Hey, but I have a point. You didn't get to say your favorite phrase.
I didn't. No, there are 5 questions total plus a bonus question. Bonus question always about the topic of the day.
Always.
What is the topic of the day? I guess it's leasing.
Made in America.
All right. Number 2, the Infiniti QX50. U.S. or some other place?
Some other place.
Yes, Mexico. They're built in, I like to say this and I don't pronounce it correctly, Aguascalientes, Mexico.
Agua Caliente.
People who don't know about this factory, it's a Nissan-Mercedes joint venture.
Okay.
And they build the QX50, the QX55, which is the fastback version of the QX50, and the Mercedes-Benz GLB down there.
Huh. Okay.
Now you know. Also, do you remember the QX30?
I do.
Yeah, that was around for 6 seconds.
Yeah.
That was built on there, too.
I really liked that car.
Ugh.
It was cute.
Oh, God.
It was cute.
All the little stuff that was used to come out of there, I didn't like.
Okay.
And it didn't feel like Mercedes stuff if it was Mercedes stuff.
Okay.
All right, the Mazda CX-50. U.S. or some other place?
I feel like...
This was newsy, by the way.
I feel like this is U.S.
It is.
Isn't it built down in Alabama?
Yes,
in
very
the
good.
Toyota plant?
Very good.
Woo!
Yeah, you got the whole thing. Mazda Toyota Manufacturing, MTM, in Huntsville, Alabama. It is a joint venture site, and it's the first Mazda plant in the U.S. They were without a plant.
Yes.
Now, Mazda had joint ventures with Ford way back when, but that's a long time ago.
Right.
All right, you've got 3, right?
Yes.
You're on a roll. You've already won.
I win.
All right.
Okay.
Where is the Cybertruck made? U.S. or elsewhere?
Well, I mean, I think it's made in the U.S., but also elsewhere.
All right. You don't want to get yourself into trouble here.
I'm gonna say U.S.
Yes.
But do they make it?
No.
Anyplace else?
No, right now they're only marketing it in the U.S. and probably Canada.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've started to see a lot more of those on the road.
Over the weekend, I saw a bunch, and you can't miss them at night.
I saw one in red camouflage.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they did a wrap on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gigafactory Austin.
Okay.
Is where the Cybertruck is made. Tesla also has factories in Shanghai, Berlin, Fremont, California, and Austin. And the one in Shanghai
does not make the Cybertruck.
It does not make the Cybertruck, but it is monstrous. It's capable of producing like 1 million cars a year.
Okay.
Monster. All right, you've got 4, right?
I do.
You're shooting on perfect.
All right.
You just got to nail this next question and the bonus question for perfect.
All right.
Jill, the DeLorean, the DMC-12, U.S. or someplace else?
Ugh.
I have an abbreviation here, and I have no idea what it means.
I was on a walk one day at my parents' house in Indiana, and I was walking down. It was like 116th Street, and I looked across the street, and there was a DeLorean sitting in somebody's driveway.
They have started to become genuinely collectible.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to find a DeLorean now for less than $30,000.
But I have no idea. I'm gonna say U.S.
No, they were built in Dunmurry, Belfast, Northern Ireland.
Oh, got it. I thought you were gonna be like in that dumb city of.
No, actually, no. John Z. DeLorean got himself into trouble with the folks in Northern Ireland because he got all sorts of tax credits and things like that, and then never built enough vehicles. He built about 9,000 vehicles total, didn't employ nearly enough people, so the whole thing fell apart.
Oops.
And there was some company building continuation vehicles with the parts. Mm-hmm. And then there was an electric car company called DeLorean. I don't know how they got a hold of the name. Basically they issued one press release, and I think that was it. But you could put a deposit down.
Of course you could.
I need to check into it. I don't know what happened, but they built 9,000 vehicles. You got 4 out of 5. Very nice.
Okay.
Bonus question coming up. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
We are revisiting a topic that is near and dear to your heart.
Pumpkin spice toilet paper?
So close.
Okay. If you don't catch that reference, you've got to listen to past episodes.
So close. Jill, which of the following is not a Hallmark Halloween movie?
Oh, yay! I kissed a girl in a Halloween sweater. No, sorry.
No.
The Christmas. We haven't done a Hallmark question for a long time.
But I know a lot of people are worried about the outcome of tomorrow's election.
Yes.
We have bigger problems.
Hallmark Halloween.
Hallmark is premiering 41 movies this holiday season.
I'm excited about that. I will watch those with my mother.
Anyone ever talking about the dumbing down of the populace? Because holy crap, 41 movies.
Come on.
Their total budget for those movies was like $800.
I'm sure. They are just total like mind candy. There's like nothing smart about them. You are correct about that.
All right, which one of these is fake? Are you ready?
Okay.
Growing the Big One. Falling for Vermont. And I suppose that's falling like autumn.
Bump.
Yeah, October Kiss or Mandy's Magic Gourd.
That just sounds horrible.
Only one of those is fake.
Whew.
The others, sadly, are real.
The others are real. And these are like...
Sociologists will look back and like, what happened to America? Oh.
Hallmark Channel.
Hallmark happened to America.
Well, but... I'm not even going to say that. You go through them again.
Sure. Growing the Big One. Falling for Vermont. October Kiss. Mandy's Magic Gourd.
I mean, October Kiss and Falling for Vermont have to be real. They just have to be real. Those sound very much like something you would find on the Hallmark Channel.
I'll cross those off for you. That leaves Growing the Big One or Mandy's Magic Gourd. Both
those
of which,
two sound pornographic.
Yeah, I'm alarmed. Frankly, I'm alarmed. Although the top one could simply be about a stash, like someone's just...
Well, I mean,
got
growing,
their own
growing a big
shop.
pumpkin,
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, it could be about a farm and, really cute place. I don't know.
I'm sure it would be cute.
Those both just sound awful.
I'm so glad there's the music.
I know, because I just can't.
Yeah. Gonna need an answer relatively soon.
I know.
Right.
We need to have a conversation with the people who are coming up with these names.
Yeah,
and with the
big
person
one
coming up with the fake.
And the quiz. Mandy's Magic Gourd.
I think that last one just can't be real. That's just way too pornographic.
So you're saying Mandy's Magic Gourd is fake?
Yes.
You are correct. Congratulations.
I'm like, that just can't be real.
I am autographing this. We haven't talked about the donuts yet. Do you know which one you're going to pick? We have...
Which one do you think I'm going to pick?
You're going to pick the apple cinnamon.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also a double chocolate. And I think that's called a Bismarck.
Yeah,
Bavarian cream.
If you ever, and you've probably figured this out by now, if you ever have anything with cinnamon on it, that is going to be the one that I choose.
All right, noted.
I just like cinnamon.
The cinnamon foot-long hot dog next week.
Okay, maybe not a hot dog with cinnamon. That would be bad.
All right, who's coming up next week?
Of course you're going to ask me, and I don't have the
because I don't remember
list in front of me. We do have somebody scheduled.
You have done a fantastic job of filling our schedule with great guests. We have all sorts of great guests. We should talk about our guests next week because
we have Don Sikora coming up next week.
That's all. Okay, so that's Collectible Automobile Magazine.
Yes.
So that's always a good conversation. I have some questions for him too about stuff.
Yeah, and then in December we have like a trifecta of new vehicle automakers coming in to chat about Porsche, Volkswagen, and Scout. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, we got stuff.
So we're going to be talking about the ID Buzz, the electric Macan, and what was the other one?
Scout Motors.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, that's big stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to need a break after that. We'll have to do something silly.
Well, Damon's coming in. So
Damon, our good friend Damon Bell.
So, yeah, he can be the silly
now with
episode.
Cars.com.
Yes.
All right, guess what we did?
We talked a lot.
We did. I had like my thank you list. Here it is. I have notes so I can be organized.
Don't you have this memorized after 3 years?
But I never, I will forget John Vincent's name. If I'm holding the list and now I know it. I don't need to look at it. Once I'm holding the list, I know it.
Okay.
But if I didn't have the list.
I'm going to see if you look down.
I will.
You look down.
Yeah. All right. Thanks to John Vincent of U.S. News and World Report. Thank you, Jill. Thanks to producer Randy and the good folks here at TalkZone. Oh, I'm a guest on this week's Nick D podcast. That's Nick DiGilio. He's been on our show. He wants to join us, so we'll try to make that happen. But his podcast drives tomorrow morning.
All right.
And we talked a lot of stuff. Also, I joined Steve and Johnny this coming Saturday on WGN Radio in Chicago. That is midnight Central Time, WGN Radio. You can stream that easily.
Awesome.
All right, let's talk more about cars again.
Next week.
Remember to check us out at consumerguide.com.
The Car Stuff Podcast is produced by J-Turn Media.
To advertise on the show, please drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.